Yeah, Muss Project. Yeah, we got that formula.
Was born and raised in Jamaica, contrary to popular belief. He's a guitarist with formal training from the Royal School of Music in London, which I'm not impressed against there, I didn't know that. Jeremy graduated from Campion College, and he left Jamaica and pursued a bachelor's degree at the McGill University in Montreal. He spent several years as a DJ, not DJ like Jatamas, but a DJ like spinning music, playing hip hop, yeah, same thing, this is a DJ, same thing. He played in clubs and etc. etc. He graduated with a diploma from the recorded music production, in recorded music production in 1991. He returned to Kingston in 93, where he established 2 Hard Records. This label is responsible for hits such as Sim Simma, by Beanie Man, Give It To Her by Devante and Tontametra, Log On by Elephant Man. But it was his discovery of the budding talent Sean Paul, whom he continued to produce and act as artist manager for the next decade, and truly cemented his career in the music industry. Jeremy groomed Sean Paul into a bona fide international superstar, selling over 10 million albums, spawning 3 Billboard #1 records. This is quite impressive, and I'm happy to introduce to bring him to the platform right now to share with us, and I want us to pay close attention to this very man of much wisdom, and I want to encourage you to ask him questions, bombard him with them here because I hold him to. Alright, so welcome to the platform, Jeremy.
Thanks much, Danny and Evan, Jams and everybody. Jeff has been here with you guys this morning, but I just like to say, Jeff, welcome and thanks very much for showing up. My dad is a lawyer, I love lawyers. A lot of people hate lawyers because lawyers mean you're in trouble. For me, a lawyer is the first person you should have in this music business. Remember I told you that. I don't really have a presentation as such. I prefer to do a question and answer, kind of like what we've been doing, because I find it kind of more directly addresses what's on people's minds. However, your particular situation, don't think we can really help you anymore with that. I think I'm in a unique position. I'm in a unique position in that I come from many angles to this music industry. I started off as a musician. It was called Jamaica School Music back then. It wasn't called Edna Manley. And I played guitar and I sang in the choir. And many of the guys I played in bands with as a teenager went on to be professional musicians in bigger bands, in Blaze Band, and play with Home Team 4 and with Rita Marley and all kinds of people. So I didn't really think my musician chops were as good to be a professional musician. So then I opted to go away to school and study. And I got interested in going to nightclubs, and I got interested in records and how records sounded, and found a place that did recorded music production. So when I studied that and learned about music production and what it took to be in the studio and to make records and to work with other people and other artists. And then coming back to Jamaica now, doing record production, when I started doing actually jingles for radio and television, and got involved with 2 young sound systems at the time, Renaissance Disco and Syndicate Disco, who were just kind of emerging. And I was fortunate to kind of be like right at the fulcrum of that whole movement of Renaissance, Sean Paul, Wayne Marshall, Mr. Vegas, Nexus, Red Rat, that kind of era right there in dancehall. I think my studio, a lot of productions which I did at that point in time helped launch many of their careers. Mr. Vegas' first record was my record, Nike Air. Sean Paul's story, you guys know, of course. Many first records by Lexus. Assassin used to come and voice in his school uniform before he even left school. So I work with a lot of young artists, myself as a young producer who couldn't get access to big artists, so I used the young artists, and everybody kind of rose out of it. In producing, I was also fortunate to get a number of hit records, as Danny mentioned, Beanie Man, Sim Simma, Elephant Man, Log On, Devante and Tontametra. And I had records which were hits, but for me, the artists never seemed to be able to travel much further. The records were big records, they played the States, they're in London, they're top 10 records, top 5 records. Some of them were #1 in certain radio stations. But there seemed to be no follow-up from the record companies that they were assigned to or from their management, which is what prompted me to get involved in artist management, to kind of take on Sean Paul. I further went on to manage Steve McGregor, Freddie McGregor's son, producer, and I also managed Craig Parks, who is Lloyd Parks' son. They call him Left Side, and I managed him for a few years. So my position is a little bit unique in that I'm a musician. I can play instruments. I used to sing in the choir, play, understand music. I also worked at a radio station when I was away for 5 years at college radio, playing reggae music and doing interviews with reggae artists when they came to Montreal. And I've experienced as a record producer, owning a studio, engineering, using software, recording artists, releasing records, and also I've experienced as an artist manager. So I find myself in a kind of unique position where I kind of had a hand in many aspects of the recording business. I think what started by saying we're going to talk about the evolution of the record producer. Is that kind of where we're at? Sorry. When I first came back to Jamaica and started to get into the reggae music industry, started to understand how it worked, it seemed to have had a system whereby the guy that owned the studio and owned the tape machine and owned the mixing board was the producer of the record. And their name was in big bottom board at the top of the record. And he was not necessarily the person who was actually making the record with anybody in the studio. So sometimes one of my colleagues here, Clevie, will tell me, like, no, Jeremy, it was actually me and Steely that played on that record. We made that record, we made that rhythm, we made that beat. A common story, I'm sure Danny has made of those too. But their names were credited as producer of the record. They were working for other producers. And so the role at that time of a producer, especially for Jamaica, I think was more, as I said, as a guy who, the big man, the boss man in charge of the thing, controlling the studio and putting on the records and owning the label. Not necessarily anybody had anything to do with the actual making of the record. Many of these producers took writing credits and put their name as writers, and years later people are balling, understand, I wrote the song and never seen a diamond publishing, and this man collected all my publishing, all my writing. When I came back in the early 90s, one of the few things that made me be able to make a mark so quickly was the fact that I brought back to Jamaica a digital recording system. This was before Pro Tools. It was called Session 8. It was an 8-track system. It was one module you bought that connected to your computer, and you had 8 tracks to record on. You didn't, nothing too fancy, but it's 8 tracks digitally connected to your computer. Now what made this significant is that I was no longer dependent on the system of coming back here and buying a reel-to-reel tape, 24-track, and booking time down at, wherever, mixing lab or Anchor, wherever, and carrying my tape. And that was what a producer did back then. You had your tape, you went to the studio, you book your time, the artists were outside, they come, you give them a chance to voice on the tape, you have them on the tape now, you own the tape, artists don't know nothing, the song just come out on the 45, they play on the radio. Producer took the music, licensed it, made his money, the artist, like my friend over there, bought instead of really collect anything. And that was a system which went on for many years, especially with Jamaica and recorded music. Now, in defense of some of the record producers, however, the artists too would do dub plates and specials and tour with those same songs, and that income stayed with the artist. So it was sort of an unwritten rule when I started. The producers made money licensing and selling records. The artists made money off of the dub plates and the live show. And that was sort of the unwritten rule. The fact of the matter is that even in the heyday of dancehall and us selling these 45s and moving them in the States and in the UK and stuff, the numbers by which people believe they were moving is not quite as much as it really was. So a hit single even in Jamaica, I don't know if I'm wrong, I think the biggest selling 45 in Jamaica was like Wild Gilbert or something, do you know that? So like 50,000 copies of that actual 45. I think, the next record, which one, some other big records. There's a couple of other records, which a big 45 sale for Jamaica, it was like 20,000 copies of a 45. You know what I mean? So, when you break down the numbers in terms of the money, there's a lot of people here who are saying like, oh, I get ripped off and the producer ripped me off and etc. etc. And the fact of the matter is there really wasn't that much money in the sale of the records to begin with. So if you had a royalty rate with a producer, right, and I'm giving you 10%, 15, 20% off of a sale, off of one of those 45 records. The fact of the matter is that you really weren't, I've seen actual statements from back then, and it was like $200 or $150, if that much, from the sale of 45s. So we'll have to kind of get this thing out of our head about there's all of this money out there that people never made and everybody was getting ripped off. Fact of the matter is too, that a lot of people in reggae business, unfortunately, as you all know, are involved in other illegal activities out of Jamaica. And the record business thing was a cover for it. So a lot of the big heavy guys with the heavy studio them and the artists them too were making money from other means. And other people look on and say, oh, this guy has this big house and this big studio, the tape machine, and I drive them on, etc. And a lot of that income was not directly made from actual music business. Okay, so these are facts which we're talking about. I'm not here to morally judge anybody on how they made their money. I'm just trying to show you that there's a differentiation from seeing certain things in the record industry and thinking about where that money was coming from and where it was actually coming from. Moving forward past that now, when I came and had my little digital system, it helped open up the door to a lot of people to say that, oh, we could actually start making records on our own for a fraction of the cost, because we wouldn't have to own a massive studio, we wouldn't have to own a tape machine that could cost 200,000 US, plus a big mixing board that could cost another 200,000 US just to get it started. We could make records in a small digital environment. So it was quickly adopted by a lot of the producers of the day. I remember Celia and Cleve actually were one of the first to really start using Pro Tools to do their full productions. And it also opened the door for a lot of other young producers and artists to record themselves at home. So now everybody had a computer set up and they could have a little portable thing and have a little Pro Tools going on this. Now, what happened is this now. Before, the record producer had that facility to make those records because he had a big tape machine and a big board and a big studio. So he was always deemed the producer of records because he owned the facility to make the records. Now once an artist or a young producer, a young musician had the ability now to stay at home in a small environment, or it doesn't have to be home, but a small environment with some digital equipment that was easily affordable now, that opened the door for them now to become record producers in their own right. So the dynamics of it changed. And when it changed, at about that time when I saw it kind of changing, the relationship changed between the producers and the artists. So it was no longer the big heavy producer guy that nobody couldn't speak to and never pay the money and cuss you off and take your tune and go on foreign and blah, and all of these stories that we hear. It was now a more equal footing where the producer and the artist were more the same type of person, and it was more and a more approachable relationship ensued because now the artist could physically sit there and say, oh, I see you have a computer, I see that that's my voice being recorded right there. I can understand that that's the rhythm. I can see you burnt me a CD. I can see it now. It's not going to press at a record plant where I don't have any access to it, which I don't know what's going on. Furthermore, digital, and we got the internet, and we got MP3s, and then now it exploded even more. The great thing about digital, from the artist's perspective, is that you can see your numbers when the sales are there. You can get the actual report. With physical records, you could never know who was telling the truth, not telling the truth. With physical records, the same question you asked about territories, you would know where to track that down. How many copies really sold in Japan, how many went to England, how many went to the States. When you're in the digital world now, you get that statement, the breakdown is there for the entire planet. So nobody can tell you, oh, we only sold this, and so, no, it's right there, it's digital, it's not physical product, there are no returns, there's no breakage, it's not sitting on nobody's shelf, not selling. It's digital, it buy, download is a simple transaction. So that has evolved very much the way that records are made, and especially for us here in Jamaica, because we have a very independent music making market. Sometimes I tell people you should be very grateful that you can sit here in Jamaica as an artist or producer. You can have a small setup, as I said, that costs a minimum amount of money. You could make records here, and you can get to hear those records on the radio, sometimes within a week, easily, or less. Maybe not the heavy rotation, but you can hear it. It is impossible for you to do that if you are in the United States, or in Canada, or in London, those places. It's never going to happen. You're either signed to a big label, or you're sitting in your basement. So we have a very fortunate position where we can actually release music and get it out there and get it played on the radio. Of course, anybody can put things on SoundCloud and sign up with somebody to get onto iTunes, but to hear your records here and to hear them in the Jamaican diaspora, in the UK and in the States and Germany and Japan, all the territories that love reggae music. This is from us sitting down and making a little record right here without a major label deal, without a marketing team, without any big distributor, right? Just by the simple fact of going to one of those aggregators we spoke to before, or even putting it on yourself. You understand? So that's something that we're very fortunate that we're able to do. The role of the record producer now has transformed from, I'm no longer the big man owning the studio, because anybody can own a studio and own a laptop and own the software. So the record producer's role now, he has had to become a lot more in touch with the product and with the artist. So this current day record producer, more than likely is also the musician that is playing on the record. More than likely he's also own the studio where you're recording it. More than likely he's also mixing the record himself too. And he's looking about the distribution deal for the record. And he may go on the road with the artist as a musician, like the guys in Daseka used to go and play for Mavado and things like that, right? And he might also be the artist on some of the records, like the same Stephen McGregor would produce, and then sometimes he would voice his own song, so he ends up being an artist on the record himself. And they might also end up managing the artists who they're working with. So the concept now of just being a record producer is no more like, well, I paid for the tape, or I paid the guy for the studio, therefore I am a producer. I think it has taken on a much wider set of roles that are bringing into one thing to define a record producer. Because of that, a lot of these same rights which you hear them talking about there, and a lot of the faces were just kind of like, oh, what are they talking about? I don't know. You have to pay much more attention to them. That sound exchange thing, for example, that's all about that digital streaming stuff. You might not get a lot of airplay, for example, on regular radio, but a lot of internet radio plays a lot of reggae music. A lot of the internet reggae radio stations. So Sound Exchange is there collecting royalties for that set of airplay, because you're not getting what they call terrestrial or land radio with a tower, with a signal which you pick up, right? So that's why I think like Sound Exchange are so important. That's why a lot of these rights which they speak about, jams are speaking about and things, which you kind of have to be up on now as a producer and as an artist, because in a traditional sense, I keep saying this because our methodology is very unique. In a traditional sense, if we are in the United States, for example, you sign a record deal, all you're really worrying about is make the record, go on to the shows, the promo or whatever, show up on the album release party. There's a whole company worrying about marketing the record, promoting the record, collecting the royalties, putting it on radio, understand and find out what's going on with your music. Now we tend to mistake the digital distributors here to us in reggae. We mistake the fact that we tend to think that they act like labels. Very big distinction. I had a producer come to me last year, said, boy, I want to talk to you because I need somebody to manage me. I said, what do you mean manage? Why? So well, I put out this album with this artist and I did distribute it first through Johnny Wanda and never liked the royalties thing which I get. So I go to Zodiac and then put it out for the I never liked the royalties. So I try to find a better distributor. So, and I'm saying, yeah man, a man like you must have the links and etc. And I'm saying to him, but you understand that Zodiac, Johnny, Zing Beats, all of these people are doing the same thing. They're putting them on iTunes. They're putting them on digital download services. They are not acting like a record label. They are simply a portal to get the music onto a digital outlet. So the Zodiac is not necessarily going to do any different of a job than Johnny Wonder. It's the same, they're just putting a record literally up to iTunes. Stops there. So you're not getting any better deal by going through anybody else because it's one distribution now. So before, when I started, I would get a deal with a VP Records in the States, and then get a deal with a Green Sleeves in the UK, and then you try to get a little deal for Japan, and then at Sonic Sounds doing Caribbean and distributing records. And I'm trying to keep track of where the sale is in this one as opposed to that one, and then trying to make the best deal for myself. And you understand, for the territories. No, the one territory you have is just the world. It's just global. So any one of those digital aggregators is really the proper name for them that you go to, right? Is doing that exact same thing. So your mindset now has to be, it's in a world marketplace, one. Two, these people are not record labels. These people simply get it up on a digital platform. So if you have a song which you release or did it with a producer and you see that on iTunes or whatever, it's up to you now to try and do something to promote yourself, to drive traffic for people to go to iTunes or go to SoundCloud or Press the Spins or go to YouTube or watch your video, etc. It's up to you. You're a little team of people now. Maybe you're a manager, if you're the artist, if you're a producer, it's up to you now and whoever that you're going to enlist. You understand, to go there to try and make your music be heard, so you can see some level of income off of the music. A lot of times I come to these things and people come in the crowd and say, I can't collect my money from here, and I didn't release this song in 19 or long, and I never see any money, and etc. etc. And we have this thing also what I want to touch on, and I hope I don't really offend anybody by saying this, but it's a very important point, that the only music that's going to earn you money is hit music, period. Just because you released a record with somebody, or put out something 10 years ago, or 10 years ago, or however long, doesn't mean that you're entitled to see money from it. It is not produce, like you just make it and put it and it won't sell because people need to eat. People don't have to eat at all. So your job as a producer, as an artist, to make hit records. Hit records is what sells, is what earns money, is what gets you a publishing deal, is what gets you spins on YouTube, SoundCloud, anywhere. It's about hit records. In so much now, the same 360 deal that Jeffrey was talking about earlier. When the record labels realized the same thing, you know what? We're hardly making any money selling the music anymore. So we're not going to make records for you, promote them, market them, put them on the radio, so that they don't sell. They'll play on the radio like crazy and be hits, generate all this publishing income. If you're the writer, then you're going to eat that food. The touring thing starts now, and you get the cars, you start touring all over the planet, and meanwhile you haven't sold any actual records. Everybody's watching it on YouTube for free, and your views are going up. So the record label's point of view is, you know what, if we're going to spend so much time and money to invest into you, we want a piece of everything. And that's what a 360 deal is. It doesn't mean 360 degrees like a circle, all around. That's what the word 360 means. We want a piece of everything. Within the 360 deal arrangement now, sometimes it's just 50-50, sometimes people can carve out different situations like, okay, you get X amount of the touring or X amount of the merch or whatever. Sometimes they'll do long-term deals like you sign to the label, you sign us to touring, and it's a 10-year thing for touring over 10 years. Big artists like Madonna and U2 and these people have it, so they're locked in to tour for the next 10 years and they share that income with the company they're with. I think Rihanna them do that with Live Nation and all that type of thing. Of course, they get big advances up front, but that's what the whole 360 situation means. From an artist's perspective, 100% more than not, it's a bad deal. Because for me now to share my touring income half with a record label, my publishing income half with a record label, it's a very sour deal for the artist. However, people leverage it and say, for example, okay, you want half of my money from my touring, then you have to put something into it. So you're going to pay for the buses, you're going to pay for the hotel rooms, you're going to pay for this. You understand what I'm saying? They're going to ask them now to pony up some money now to put into the deal. You want half my merch? Then you have to pay for the manufactured things in the first place. So you're going to pay for all the t-shirts, everything else, and we're going to go on the road and sell it and bring the vendor, and then we'll cut the money in half. Right? So they don't just like sit there and sign and then just everything half gets taken away from them. You want to take half my publishing? All right, guess what happened? I want to write a song with this writer that does work with Adele. I want to write a song with that guy. I want to get to the studio with the guy that does produce a record for Bruno Mars, whatever. Since you want to have my publishing, you need to put me in touch with other writers and other people now to help me generate these hit songs. So there's ways to maneuver within these kind of deals to kind of make it work for you. Now, again, back to a Jamaican situation, what it really means is similar to what we're talking about. If I'm the producer and I'm putting out a rhythm, and I have these 6 artists here in front of me, no longer is it feasible for me as a record producer to just voice the 6 people, put out the song, and you go about your business. Because a day gone past, I could have voiced the 6 songs, I could have picked up the phone and called a VP or a Greensleeves or Japan, and say, have a new rhythm come out, and have X, Y, Z, A, B, C on there, and they'd be like, no problem, Jeremy, send it to us to send you advance. Here's a 20 grand US, a 30 grand, and I would do that and do my territories and get my advance as a record producer. Those days for record producers are over, finished. So now, for me to record a rhythm, and I have to use 6 artists on it right here, I'm going to release it digitally, because this is now my other ways of distribution, and I'm going to see if it's going to sell. And I'm going to tell you some of the biggest selling digital albums for reggae artists. I mean, sometimes the figures get published in the Observer, you're going to cry when you see them. 2,000 copies, 3,000 copies. That's it. We're talking Taurus Riley, we're talking, you understand what I'm saying? All like big name reggae artists, Chronics, all of these people, Chronics is the biggest noise. You're going to see on iTunes, the reports, they're selling 4,000 units digitally of an album. You understand what I'm saying? But those artists realize the money is not in the sale, the money is in the touring. It's in the endorsements, it's in some of the dub plate money legs is for some of them. So it's a different kind of income stream to make money. Right? So what that means now for you as a record producer. So if I can no longer just voice the songs and get my quick fat advance, there's no way that it is feasible for me to, when I own my own studio, go have paid light bill to turn on the equipment, said way, right? My time, my energy, if I can do everything, I can. If not, I have to still pay a guy to mix the record, maybe. I still might have to pay some musicians to build the rhythm. To do all of that, I still have to promote the record, right? Thank you very much. And I have to do all of these things to try and generate interest in it, so I hope that I can sell some units digitally. Jamaica has no iTunes store. You can't buy music from iTunes in Jamaica. You can't use your local credit card. Right? So you have to kind of go around it and buy like an iTunes gift card thing and register with some foreign thing and log on to the, I don't know if anybody's ever really tried it. There's no Jamaican store. There's a Jamaican store for the apps. Right. Right, for apps for your phone, there's a Jamaican store. You know, like look at Jamaican flag in the corner. You ever seen it when it tells you what store you're in on iTunes? That's how it works. So there's no store for our territory. So here, locally, we can't buy the music digitally from iTunes, for example. See what I'm saying? So that's one of the first issues that you see. So I find it funny when I pick up my phone and see my WhatsApp thing. I use that BlackBerry Messenger. Everybody tweeting out and sending out links to iTunes to each other to buy music on iTunes. New tune just come out, iTunes link, right there, like this. And none of us can buy it off iTunes. You see what I'm saying? Also coupled with the fact where when you have a digital medium now like iTunes, you know how iTunes works off our credit card system. A lot of our fellowship in reggae that listen to reggae music and our Jamaicans out there in the diaspora, a lot of these markets and these people are people that are in depressed areas, working class people, people that come from, you understand? Those kind of backgrounds that listen to the music, that don't have the ability necessarily to have an iTunes account with a credit card on it. So if you get up tomorrow and do a show with Brixton, and 2,000 yard man from over there show up at the show, right? And you're going to take a head count. How many of you guys have credit cards and you have signed up for iTunes? You follow what I'm saying? And this is a lot of your core audience. So this thought process of when you're selling things digitally, you have to try and remember now, the market that you're selling to is not necessarily this core market that you're envisioning, because they don't have the means, either locally or abroad, to be able to purchase your thing digitally. So, having all that in mind, the artists out there who are going to be upset about having royalties from the producers, etc., just keep all of those things in mind. That one, even if you were one of the biggest artists in Jamaica at any given point in time, you'd be lucky to see 5,000 units move on iTunes of any product. So your royalty, again, $200. Literally, that's what we're talking about. So you've got to be thinking about sources of income to be from publishing and from touring. Because you're going to get money paid for your performance royalties, it plays on the radio, whether it's internet radio, terrestrial, that's where you're going to see money coming from. right, in there, and you're going to see the money off the touring. That's the number one thing. For us, few of us here, yes, can get an endorsement thing, we'll pass a digital billboard and we'll see people's faces up there. And, you know what I mean? There are some artists like that can hope for that. But this whole idea of like the sale of the records digital, it's something you need to kind of put to the side and realize that you have to look at other sources of income. Because the rest of the world is looking at other sources of income. Right? And they're moving towards it right now. iTunes is moving to their streaming service that they're partnered with Dr. Dre with the Beats headphones thing. It's about the streaming service that Beats headphones are starting to put together. It's not about the headphones. Couldn't care less about the headphones. It's a streaming service. So what a streaming service will mean is the same thing. Like you pay a flat money and you stream music. So now you're eliminating the model of buying music, right? We'll go and watch TV, you turn on the cable, you turn on Flow. You don't pay, I mean, you still have your pay-per-view or your HBO, you can buy a thing, but you pay a fee for the month and you get 1,000 channels, right? And you watch what you want to watch. So the music model, like it or not, is moving towards a streaming model. YouTube themselves is having a new service called Music Key, I think it's called, which is supposed to be a high-end version of YouTube, and not like the crappy little YouTube quality things that you'll get sometimes. It's a very high-quality sound stream, which they're going to try and put online, and then encourage people to use that service to put high-quality versions of their songs out there. So you're moving more and more towards a streaming model for music. So we have to play catch-up very fast. The CD format is dead. Forget CDs. I heard something about CDs. Forget it. No point. Nobody wants a CD at no point in time to do anything. You buy a car stereo today or your car, it has a little USB slot, you put a little USB key in there, and that's how you use the music in your car. Everything is downloads, everything is your computer, your phone, everybody uses their phone to listen to music. There's no CDs anymore. Right? So forget that. Radio disc jockey is the same thing. Email them, they don't want a physical CD. They're going to have a laptop with their software, Serato, whatever. They can download the songs, have a playlist, they go and put up a laptop, they're playing from their computer, music on a hard drive. You understand? So there's a lot of these things that we kind of need to update ourselves. And I kind of speak broadly because I realize that there's a mix of artists in here and producers. Not everybody's a straight producer. But it's just a thought process that we all have to kind of adapt to move along. So, that being said, and I said I didn't have a presentation, right? That being said, now, I think you have to have a very modern take on what it means to be a record producer, especially for our Jamaican market. I think you have to have a very broad vision of you're kind of doing so many things yourself. I mean, you might be writing on the song, you might be the artist yourself, you might be playing the instruments, you might be mixing it, you own the computer, you own the hard drive. Maybe there's no tape anymore to own, but you're going to own the physical means by which you recorded that record. You're going to be looking about that distribution deal with a digital aggregator, putting out the songs on iTunes. You're going to remember that they're not a record company, they're simply just putting it on iTunes. So you have to find some means to promote yourself, to drive traffic for people to be like, I like this guy's music, let me go online and see if I want to purchase his music. Or let me go on YouTube and type it in and see if I want to watch his video. Or let me go on Facebook, I want to like his page. Let me get involved with the artist that way. We're going to have to give us some music for free and give people free downloads. And so you're encouraging all this to heighten your presence as an artist. For you as a record producer, if I have these 6 artists in front of me, I'm signing them to my camp. That's the only reason why I'm making records with you. Why would I just make records with you? To promote them, for them to get popular. For you to say, yeah man, Germs, respect. Plane, fly out, visa, show money. German gets 0. German, you understand what I'm saying? So the whole paradigm of how you think about records now. If you're a producer out there and you have a rhythm and you look to voice some artists, your thought process needs to be, how do I monetize this now, these records with these artists? Because there's no selling of records or digital for you to make back your money. It's not possible. So you're going to think about signing them to some management deal or some kind of production deal or some sort of local 360 deal if you want. To be like, here's a plan, I'm going to put up the money, or I have a studio, I can build the rhythms, you can voice stuff, put them out, and we'll have a share in the money. I know guys that share dub plate money, I never did that with anybody I managed. So people are like, no, if you have dub plate, I want a piece of it. I don't, because it's my tune that you're making the money. You know what I'm saying? So, but these are all specific arrangements that you have to have a discussion before you enter into arrangements with anybody. Same gentleman there complaining about the money that he spent, and the guy is a producer and he didn't get this. What I'm trying to tell you is the same type of situation. You have to have an understanding to be like, okay, if I'm going to put money into this thing, and you're going to do this part of the thing, then maybe we're partners in it. So you know, I'm an artist now, I'm also a co-producer on this record. That means we're going to do a share of the profits that come in. You understand? So you got to start thinking more like this. So I think, to me, this is sort of more the modern paradigm of a record producer. I say, especially for Jamaica and our personal situation. You know what I mean? That's how you have to kind of adapt your thinking a lot, see the marketplaces, and kind of make. So when a man says, yo, I'm a producer now, it takes on a whole new way of thinking, of doing things. You understand? It's no longer the old model of like, hey man, me pay for the time and me pay the man for the rhythm. It's like, no, but that's not good enough. Did you do the distribution? Are you investing in the artist? Is he signed to you? Did you understand what I'm saying? It kind of has to be more of that type of situation. So again, for somebody who wasn't really going to present anything, I think I tried my best to kind of give you guys a mini presentation.
One of them, two of them, three of them, four of them, five of them, must bust project. Whoa, because the vibes is right.